Hello everyone, today I'm in Almonte and I'm going to give you a walking tour to show you what it looks like in March. It's a great time of year to visit because the water spring flow is almost at max capacity. So let's go check it out. And we are starting right now at the Almonte Flour Mill. Let's go! So this is the Almonte Town Hall. With its flourishing mill industry, Almonte's population grew rapidly. An imposing town hall was necessary to reflect this prosperity and act as a much-needed multi-purpose civic space. Almonte's Town Hall, built in 1885 at the request of town reeve and mill owner Bennett Rosamond, was designed by architect Eugene Liston in the Romanesque Revival style, popular in the New Dominion of Canada. Among other services, the Almonte Town Hall housed the police station, the public library, the mayor's office and council chambers, the fire hall, and a theater. The building served as a town hall until 1998 when Almonte amalgamated with Ramsey and Packenham to create the municipality of Mississippi Mills. With new municipal offices located on the outskirts of Almonte, the former town hall continues to serve the community as a multi-purpose artistic and event space. Today, the striking building is considered an architectural gem in downtown Almonte. You can access it but also by taking the Riverwalk, which we will do shortly. William Thoburn and the Thoburn Mill. Before it became a woolen mill, there were 6 different owners of this property between 1861 and 1880. The site was used as a sawmill, a dye house, and a furniture company before being purchased by William Thoburn, a Canadian woolen mill owner and politician in the province of Ontario. William Thoburn came to Canada from England in 1857 and attended school in Pakenham, Ontario, before moving to Almonte in 1867. Thoburn was the Member of Parliament for Lanark North between 1908 and 1917 and also served as the Mayor of Almonte for 7 years. In 1880, Thoburn established the Thoburn Woolen Mills with his partner Samuel Sheard. The mill, which operated next to the Almonte Town Hall until 1918 when it was destroyed by fire, was known for producing high-quality flannel. The mill was rebuilt and continued to operate as a fabric mill until 1956. The Thoburn Mill building has now been repurposed as condominiums and office space and has won a National Heritage Award for Resilient Places. So again, this is the Old Town Hall. Almonte War Memorial. Okay, next we're going to walk by the old City Hall and then take the Riverwalk. The founding of Almonte, the sawmill and gristmill completed here on the Mississippi River in 1823 by Daniel Shipman, provided the nucleus around which a community known as Shipman Mills has developed by 1824. About 1850, 2 town plots were laid out here, Victoria by Edward Mitchison and Ramseyville by Daniel Shipman. They were combined in 1853 as Waterford, which is 1855 was renamed Almonte, probably after Juan N. Almonte, a famous Mexican general and diplomat. The opening of several woolen mills and the completion of a railway to Brockville fostered the growth of Almonte, which by 1870 was one of Ontario's leading woolen cloth manufacturing centers. Incorporated as a village in 1871 with a population of about 2,000, Almonte was proclaimed a town in 1880. The bench of the minister and his wife. Strangers sit and rest and dream, the noisy millstone turns no more, before you run the restless stream that seeks the ocean evermore. All right, now we're gonna walk the Riverwalk. Before you is the Mississippi River. It empties into the Ottawa River south of Armpire and has no connection with the much longer and more famous American River. The name here is a corruption of two Ojibwe words, Mississippi, meaning large or great river. The river in the early days was a major concourse for floating logs downriver to the Ottawa River and then on to Montreal or Quebec City for transport to Europe markets. There were 2 water slides used to ferry the logs over the falls, one under the train bridge and the other, much longer one, adjacent to the Victoria Woolen Mill on the lower falls. Before the advent of refrigeration, blocks of ice were used in household ice boxes. These were cut from the frozen river in the spring and stored in ice houses scattered throughout the town. The ice was covered in sawdust to keep it frozen and delivered to household throughout the year. The land on which you are standing was once a lumber yard for Daniel Shipman sawmill. At one time, the town was called Shipman Mills. In 1884, the land was used to build the new town hall, which stands behind you. The Riverwalk was made possible through the generous support of the Federal Economic Development Agency for Southern Ontario, as well as contributions from local supporters matched by the municipality of Mississippi Mills. Numerous volunteers helped with the planning and development of the Riverwalk, making it an outstanding and unique community asset. Bernard Alexander Cameron Memorial Fountain. The Brockville to Ottawa Railroad came to Almonte in 1859 and promptly went bankrupt. More money was obtained in 1864 and it was pushed onward to Sandpoint near Arnprior. The main freight for many years was wood from the vast forest in the upper Ottawa Valley. The railroad also became the catalyst for the phenomenal growth of the woolen industry in Almonte. The stone building directly across the river was a grist or flour mill. The flume allowed the water to be delivered into the mill and powered two water turbines, which in turn supplied power to drive the machinery through the use of line shafts. There are still two turbines in this building that produce electricity. The stone building to your left stone building to your left was built and used for many years as a foundry. It originally had another three-level addition. The business produced many parts for farm and factory machinery as well as single-purpose machinery such as fanning mills. The large brick building behind you was one of the 6 woolen mills operating at the height of the trade in the late 1800s. Today it stands as a fine example of multi-purpose reuse of older buildings and houses or a mixture of commercial units and residential condominiums. Alright, so now this building is used as the Barley Mow, which is a great place to eat. It's got a great patio and a view of the water. So I highly recommend coming here in the summer months and even all year round. Alright, let's go explore the rest of the Riverwalk. The Mississippi River in eastern Ontario is a tributary of the Ottawa River. The upper basin starts in the Mazenau Lake area and enters the Ottawa River above Chadds Falls. Recognizing a need to manage the water flow, Mr. Jim Brown of Carleton Place founded the Mississippi River Improvement Company Limited in 1909. In 1910, MRIC was chartered by provincial legislation to levy tolls on water users of the system. The tolls were used to cover the cost of operating and maintaining dams at Cross, Long, and Gull Lakes. Ultimately, the company also assumed responsibility of abandoned dams at Mazenau, Shabomica, and Massagogan Lakes. At the peak of its operation, the company was collecting tolls from as many as 17 users comprised of flour, feed, textile, and sawmills, and small hydroelectric generating stations. By the 1980s, there were only 4 users left on the system, including Almonte Hydro, a founding shareholder in the company. The company continued to bear the total cost of dam operations, despite the fact that there were other major benefactors, namely cottage owners, recreational users, and the conservation authorities. Through negotiations with the Mississippi Valley Conservation Authority, the Ministry of Natural Resources, and Ontario Hydro, the 5 upper dams were turned over to the MVCA, and Cross Lake was taken over by Ontario Hydro in 1980. In 1991, the company closed out its operations. Archaeological evidence confirms that Aboriginal people fished, hunt, and lived along the Ottawa River watershed, including the Mississippi River, for thousands of years. Almonte's Mill Street follows an old portage bridge, and in 2001, an ancient stone axe head was discovered by the Upper Falls. These semi-nomadic Algonquin lived in family groups, traveled by canoe in summer to fishing grounds, or by snowshoe and toboggan in winter to hunt. They also practiced some agriculture, harvesting corn, beans, and squash, as well as wild rice, and traded with other groups. After contact with Europeans in 1603, they began to take part in the fur trade, which led to conflict with the rival Iroquois. Settlers began to move into the area in the early 19th century. In 1817, Reverend William Bell wrote of meeting two native families coming down the river in 3 canoes who had deer, muskrats, and various kinds of fowl, which they exposed for sale. European settlement had a major impact on Aboriginal life in the area. In November 1884, new game regulations led to confiscation of fur from 2 Aboriginal trappers between Almonte and Appleton. They doubtless intended to do the river above Carlton Place, as has been their custom, and was in most destitute circumstances. The magistrate inflicted a fine of $10 and costs. Today, Algonquin traditional territory in Ontario, including the Mississippi River, is subject to a land claim negotiation. In 1857, James Rosamond built this mill on the Mississippi River, thereby firmly establishing the woolen industry in Almonte. An Irish-born entrepreneur, Rosamond was previously a resident of nearby Carlton Place, where in 1846 he had built one of the first woolen factories in this part of Upper Canada. In 1866, his son Bennett and William, then in control, expanded the firm by constructing another larger mill in Almonte. And in 1882, Bennett also founded the Almonte Knitting Company. The Rosemont's alliance with Montreal financial interests contributed significantly to their success. By 1890, the Rosemont woolen concerns, at the height of their influence, employed over 500 people in Almonte, then reputably the seat of the woolen trade in Canada. Right, and now this building, one of its uses is the Italian Joe's Kitchen. It's a really good Italian restaurant. I highly recommend it. And as you just saw, it has an awesome patio on the water as well. So go check it out. So that building was once called the Ramsey Woolen Cloth Manufacturing Company and the Victoria Woolen Mill. And it was built in 1851. And it's been repurposed into condos and restaurants. Here's another view of the falls. Here's some street art on the main street of Almonte. So this was Stan Morton, 1924, when he was a 14-year-old mill worker employed at the Rosemont Mills as a bobbin boy. And this is James Rosemont, circa 1857, a founder of the Almonte woolen manufacturing industry. is an ice cream shop that's open in the summer months. So I highly recommend you stop by and get some ice cream when you visit in the summer. And this is a really cool mural. So there's tons of cute little shops, galleries, restaurants, you name it, bookstores that you can find along this main street. So I definitely recommend you take a stroll and check all the little shops out. So this is the current post office. But what's most interesting is that this large building up ahead with the clock tower, that is the historic original post office. And then right in front, you can find the James Naismith statue and memorial. So Dr. James Naismith, inventor of basketball, born November 6, 1861, and he died November 28, 1939. There's a basketball net. A description here. What he accomplished. James Naismith was born on November 6, 1861, the son of John Naismith, Margaret Young. His birthplace was on the family farm in Ramsey Township, approximately 3 kilometers north of Almonte, Ontario. At the age of 9, his parents died of typhoid fever, leaving James, sister Annie, and brother Robert to be raised by their uncle P.J. Young. He attended grade school at Bennett Corner, north of Almonte, and high school in Almonte. In 1883, he enrolled at McGill University in Montreal, where he earned a BA in physical education and was an avid participant in football, rugby, lacrosse, and ground gymnastics. In 1887, he entered the Presbyterian College of Theology in Montreal, where he obtained a diploma in 1890. Having completed his studies at McGill, Naismith joined the staff of the YMCA training school in Springfield, Massachusetts. During his time in Springfield, Naismith was given the task of developing an indoor game which could be played during the winter months that was fair to all players and was free of rough play. While contemplating this assignment, Naismith drew upon a game he had played as a youth called Duck on a Rock. The objective of this new game involved a ball being tossed into peach baskets, of which 2 had been nailed 10 feet off the floor, located at each end of the gymnasium. Naismith found that the most accurate techniques to toss the ball into the basket was to arc the throw, a method he remembers from his days playing Duck on a Rock. Naismith then drew up a set of 13 rules, with each team consisting of 9 players. On December 21st, 1891, Naismith's new game of basketball was introduced to one of his classes at the Springfield YMCA Gymnasium. The first official team consisted of 5 Americans and 4 Canadians. The game of basketball successfully caught on internationally and is now one of the most popular team sports of the world. And you can find more memorabilia about James Naismith at the Mill of Kentel Museum. I will link I have a video on that as well that you can check out. So I will link that at the end of this video for you if you want to learn more. So again, this is the original historic post office. At the top you can see it says 1890. Of the historic post office. Okay, so earlier I showed you Thornburn Mill. So this is what it looks like from the other side. It's a historic building. See over there, you can see the old town hall. So the Thornburn Mill is now a condominium. Thornburn Mill produced woolen grain flannel from 1880 to 1956. Power to run the machinery during that period came from harnessing the Mississippi River through the use of water turbine like this one, manufactured by Chase, Barber and Sons in Meaford, Ontario. This water wheel would turn various line shafts, gears, and belts, distributing power throughout the building. Thornburn Mill now contains luxury condominiums and commercial spaces. Between 1840 and 1870, woolen manufacturing emerged as a major Canadian industry. Mills were built in areas such as the Mississippi Valley, where water power, labor, and wool supplies were abundant. James Rosemount built mills at Carleton Place in Almonte in the 1840s and 1850s. His sons, Bennett and William, began this much larger mill in 1866 in partnership with George Stephen of Montreal. For the next 40 years, it was one of the largest, most progressive mills in Canada. The main buildings, nearly flat roof, stair tower, and fenestration, are characteristic of late 19th century textile mills in Canada. In 1862, Bennett Rosemount inherited the Rosemount Woolen Company. In his presidency, he made his factories more efficient, secured government contracts, thereby creating stability in Almonte. These changes marked the end of the first stage of growth and the beginning of the second stage of growth and development. This period will be one of the most successful times in the mill's history. The Rosamond Bell. This bell was created from a melted down cannon used by Charles Rosamond, who fought for the South. It reads Rosamond Woolen Company, 11,901, recast from bell made by B&W Rosamond and Company, 1867. Punctuality was taken very seriously at the number 1 mill factory. The large bell originally used to hang in the factory's tower. It rang 4 times each morning to call employees to work. The 20th century was a very difficult time for the Canadian woolen industry. The booming war years were followed by crippling recessions, and by the 1950s, many Canadian mills could no longer compete with foreign products. Few mill complexes remain in Ontario to tell the story of the woolen manufacturing industry. Important factories in Montreal, Trois-Rivières, Cornwall, Hamilton, and Cambridge have all burnt down or been demolished. The Rosamond No. 1 Woolen Mill was the last mill in Almonte in operation until the ownership of Colley Woolen Mills. However, after 120 years, its doors were closed in 1987. Mississippi Mills has protected and takes pride in its architectural heritage. Its mills remain an iconic part of the landscape, having been converted into condominiums, stores, businesses, and museums. All of these medals were won by the Rosamond Woolen Company at various exhibitions. These international exhibitions were important to many companies since they were an excellent platform to promote and improve trade and sales. So you've got the silver medal, Dominion of Canyon medal, and a bronze medal. Though industrialized woolen manufacturing slowly disappeared from the Lanark region, the people of this area continue to be actively involved in textiles. Several groups operate within the area, making yarn, clothing, accessories, decor, and artwork. Many weavers, crafters, and spinners are also eager to share their knowledge and talents with the public and volunteer with the Mississippi Valley Textile Museum to demonstrate how wool is processed today, woven and used today. Pinking shear machine. Pinking shear blades are notched or zigzagged. They provide decorative edge to fabric and prevent fraying. This custom-built pinking shear machine was used for making samples for books of Kenwood blankets. The squares were approximately 1.5 to 2 inches in size. In order to dye the wool certain shades, the powdered dyes had to be mixed into a solution of water with either acetate acid and/or sulfuric acid to achieve the desired color. These chemical bottles would have utilized and stored for use in the dye house. This scoop was utilized in the Rosamond No. 1 mill dye house. Books like this provided the woolen mill with information and calculations to achieve the desired color for their woolen products. Each color on the shade card comes with recommended calculations for each color. The fulling ball was used to establish a shrinking number for each type of wool produced at the Rosamond mill. Depending on the end use of the wool, it was important to know how each wool type would shrink during processing. Approximately 21% of woolen textile workers of the 1870s were children, some as young as 9. Many families relied on the small wages their children brought in to make ends meet. Children were suited for mill work because their small bodies could crawl under machines to clean the floors, fix broken threads, and catch bobbins. They also cost less to the employers in terms of wages. The Ontario Factories Act of 1884 forbade boys under 12 years of age and girls under 14 from working in mills. It also limited the working hours of women and youth to a maximum of 10 hours a day. Though enforcement was initially lax, statistics show that child labor did decrease in Ontario after the legislation came into effect. This is an example of an early industrial loom made in England. Imported into Canada to weave Harris tweed cloth, this loom is foot-powered, has 4 harnesses and a manually operated shuttle. A metal dobby chain would have controlled the pattern. This device was designed to provide information on yard count. This yarn count specifies the size of yarn by measuring diameter as well as its density. The yarn balancer. A yarn balancer is a device used to determine the yardage of a particular yarn by weighing an evenly balanced length of yarn. The yardage can be determined by measuring the length and multiplying by 100. Have you ever accidentally shrunk wool in the washing machine? The result is called fulling and was often done on purpose in the mills to make cloth tighter and fluffier. Afterwards, it was run through a napper, which was used on rotating spiky burrs to raise the wool fibers for a soft finish. The tessel burr used on this style of napper came from Europe and was prepared and mounted on the small steel rolls, which in turn were mounted onto the large cylinder in the napper. Kenwood mills use this machine for demonstration purposes. C&K loom. In a cam loom, the cam controls the motion of the harnesses. This loom is a mechanically driven 92-inch cam loom with fly shuttles and 4 harnesses. McGregor, Gourley and Company in Galt, Ontario built this loom in the 1900s. In the 1880s, the Rosemont Woolen Company's mill had 80 looms operating at once. Weaving transforms loose yarn into cloth by interlacing them on a machine called a loom. These were originally hand-operated and powered by foot. Power looms automated weaving and sped up the process considerably, though workers were still needed to watch the machines in case of broken threads and to fill shuttles. 2 sets of yarn are required to weave a cloth, warp and weft. Warp yarns are held tight by the loom. Weft yarn is one long, continuous strand running horizontal that is passed over and under the warp threads by a shuttle. Can you spot a weave pattern on your clothes? The cone winder. Some of the yarn made at the Rosemont No. 1 mill was used in the Almonte Knitting Company mill, also known as the Rosemonts. Yarn destined for factory knitting was wound into hollow wooden or cardboard supports called cones. This machine was used to wind skins of dyed and dried yarns onto a paper cone. The yarn could then be used for normal production. Huck Canada Limited in Arnprior used this machine to wind yarns used in the production of paper maker's felt. The cop winder. Spun yarn was wound over itself on a driven steel spindle to produce a yarn package called a cop. Cops were longer, narrow packages of yarn that were wound around a steel spindle and then placed in a wooden shuttle on the loom for weaving. They could reach lengths of up to 45 feet. Carded wool must be spun to create a fiber strong enough to use in the manufacturing process. The process of spinning twists the fibers around themselves, making them into a strong yarn suitable for weaving. There are 3 steps in spinning. Stretching makes the wool thin and even, twisting strengthens the wool into yarn, and winding the yarn on spindles and bobbins. Spinning was traditionally carried out using various techniques and equipment such as hand-operated drop spindles until the invention of industrial machinery in the 18th century. These new inventions, such as the water frame, spinning jenny, and spinning mule, were developed to make spinning more efficient. The bobbin winder, early 1900s. To prepare for weaving really large bolts of cloth, several spools or bobbins were wound together to form a much longer yarn. Machines like this bobbin winder were operated by hand, though later this process was mechanized. The yarn twister. Mill workers used a yarn twisting machine like this one in front of you to twist spindles of spun yarn together to create multi-ply yarn. This made it strong enough to be woven into fabric. This specialty yarn twister, made in Worcester, Massachusetts, and donated by Huck Canada in Arnprior, Ontario. It is estimated that 1/6 of 19th century Mississippi Valley residents worked in the textile trade. Sometimes whole families worked in the mills. While employment in the mills did provide income, the work itself was very difficult. Labor conditions were characterized by strict discipline, long hours, low pay, and often unsafe working conditions. The large bell in this exhibition once hung in the Rosamond Woolen Company mill tower and summoned people to work early morning for 7 a.m. Late workers found the gate locked and were docked pay. Until the 1930s, when a 50-hour work week was adopted, mill employees labored for 12 hours each day with only one 45-minute lunch break. When business was good, workers were kept overtime with no additional pay. When business was slow, workers were frequently laid off. The mixing picker, early 1900s. A mixing picker opens the wool fiber to produce a continuous compressed sheet suitable for carding machines. The fleece is fed into the back where it picks apart by the teeth and squished flat by the rollers. This machine is a 10 horsepower, 6-bar, 24-inch wide mixing picker. It was built in the early 1900s and formerly used in the J. Watchorn Woolen Mill in Marrickville, Ontario. Wool fresh from the sheep is dirty, smelly, and greasy. Scouring is an essential process in the preparation of wool for spinning, whether for worsted or for woolen yarns. Mill workers would wash the sorted wool in a large scouring machine with hot water and detergent. The process would soften mill workers' hands because of the lanolin from the fleece. After drying, the wool was run through a picker, which removed vegetable matter and loose debris. The picker machine opened up the wool, similarly to pulling it apart with your fingers. Blade shears. Before the invention of the sheep shearing machine, shearers had to remove the fleece from the sheep using blade shears. When done properly, fleece came off in one neat sheet and was rolled into a compact bundle. The rolled fleece was then ready to be sent to the wool sorters. Hand carders. Hand carders were used exclusively prior to the invention of the carding machine. Like the carding machines, they untangled and straightened the wool fibers for the spinning twisting process. The sheep shearing machines were introduced to the industry in the late 1800s and greatly sped up the shearing process. They worked just like the clippers in a barber shop. This early model required 2 men to operate, 1 to turn the crank and 1 to work on the sheep. All right, so as an added bonus, that some people tend to miss when they come visit Almonte is the Brian J. Gallagher Generation Station, where you can see some really awesome falls. It is located right across. There's a park, a really nice park that's over there with benches and a dock where you can access the water. And we are right across from the Almonte Main Street. All right, so I'm going to show you the falls. Some information, historical information here. Almonte was a prominent mill town in a young industrializing country. Harnessing and managing the flow of water at Almonte was one of the most important factors in the town's first century of economic development. The flow of water, its division into two channels, and the natural 53-foot drop of the Mississippi River of Almonte made the location ideal for powering industrial development in the town, including mills, foundries, and eventually a hydroelectric power station. Sawmills and gristmills was the first to appear in the 1820s and 1830s. In the latter half of the 19th century, a string of textile mills was built along both channels of the river. Some of the buildings, such as the Victoria Woolen Mill, the Rosamont Woolen Company, and the Thornburg Mill, are still standing, a physical reminder of what a mill town looked like. Many of the other textile mills, such as the Cannon Mill, the Old Red, the Golden Fleece, and Pemmons, are long gone. Other industries including foundries and the Wiley Grist Mill were also constructed along the river. They too can be seen now in their new adaptations. The first hydroelectric station was built in 1890. It was relocated and upgraded in 1925 and again in 2010. Now the town's past is evident through the preservation of its built heritage and the work of local historians in recording its stories. And see, right over there is where the main street is. Okay, and in the summer months, there's a dock here that people can launch like canoes, kayaks, people go fishing. Won't get too close, but here's a flock of Canada geese. They always come back in the spring. Right. And lastly, there's just a little display over here that you might find interesting. Alright, so Metcalfe Geo-Heritage Park, Reading the Rocks. Welcome to Canada's first municipal geo-heritage park. The specimens on display are sedimentary rocks of Ordovician age, about 500 to 450 million years old, as well as both igneous and metamorphic rocks of Precambrian age, from about 2.5 billion years to about 1 billion years ago. They collectively illustrate many of the features that allow geoscientists to unravel Earth's remarkable geological history. Let the rocks take you on a journey far back in time to recurring episodes of towering mountains, colliding continents, changing ocean depths, and landscapes locked in ice. See, they're just a display. You can walk around and look at a bunch of different types of rocks. Sir William E. Logan and the Geology of Canada. This plaque commemorates the 175th anniversary of Natural Resources Canada Geological Survey of Canada and a dramatization of its founder, William Logan, visiting the Metcalfe Geo-Heritage Park in 2017. Logan first surveyed the Ottawa River Valley on a famous expedition in 1845. His field party traveled by canoe from Montreal to Lac Temiskaming with a trip up the Mississippi River to Pakenham, Ontario, where he recorded details of the geological features. This plaque was unveiled at the inauguration of the QR code system at Canada's first municipal geo-heritage park by Dr. Daniel Lebel, Director General of the GSC, on September 16, 2017. All right, thanks for watching this tour of Almonte, Ontario. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, give it a like. If you enjoy content about things to do in Ontario, Canada, please subscribe to my channel. And until next time, happy travels!